In this video, we're going to continue our discussion about methods. This time we're going to take a look at those methods that don't return a value. So if you remember, last video I had created this program here, which has 4 methods in it that I have created. And these methods, one is to add 2 numbers together. One is to subtract 2 numbers. One is to multiply the 2 numbers. And the last method that I wrote is the average, which we'll find the average between the 2 numbers. So these are all return methods. So if I wanted to write a method that does not return anything, there's a couple of ways that I can do this. And there's one of these that actually will be better than another. So I'm going to show you both methods, and then we'll discuss why one might be a better choice than the other. So one of the things I want to highlight about this that we're going to be focusing on for this next method is these lines of code right in here that print out our results. So in the way that this program is written right now, the value for sum that is calculated in the sum method returns to this line and is set to the variable sum. And so the value that is returned from that method is stored in sum. So this then, when it gets down to this line right here, can then print out that result. So one very easy way to change this program such that it does not return a value, or we use a method that is not one that returns values, we can move this print statement into this method. Okay, so let's just go ahead and do that. And so I'm going to grab these 2 lines right here, which are associated with printing out the sum, and I'm going to cut them out of here, and I'm going to bring them down here, and I'm going to paste them in. But now note that here the variable that I want to print out is not sum, it's actually result. So I'll type in result. And this time it does not return a value, so I don't need this return statement. So I can do a couple of things. I could just get rid of it here, or I could comment it out. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of it completely. That way then we know it's not a return method. Another thing that I need to note about return or methods that don't return a value is that they are what we call void. Void of any value is basically what the void stands for. So here where I have int, I need to change this to say void. If you note, that's something that we have in our main program. Up here in the main program, we say static void main. Okay, so you can think of the main actually being a method in itself, but it doesn't return a value, so it has a void. Okay, so with that one done, another thing that I need to change in order for this to work is I need to come up here, and instead of having it return a value and assign it to the variable sum, I need to change that statement. And here I actually am going to void that out so we can, or not void it out, but comment it out, so we can actually see the difference between the 2 lines. This time all I need to do is call the function. Alright? And to call the function, I just call it by its name. Sum, parentheses open, and then I'm going to pass in my 2 parameters, num1 and num2, and I close my parenthesis, and end the statement. So you can see that here, this is an assignment statement, assigning the value that's returned to a integer variable that I've declared to be sum, and in this statement I just clearly call the method. Okay, so let's do the same thing with the other methods here. I'm going to go ahead and grab the difference And I'll cut that out of there. I'll come down here and paste it in here. I need to reduce my indentation. Don't need to have the extra indentation in here. And I don't need the return, so I'll go ahead and get rid of that as well. I'll change difference to, say, result, because that's what I have right here. So those two need to be the same. This is a method this method does not return a value now, so I'll change the int to a void. And then up here on this line here, I'll change this so that all it does is call the difference function. And let's see here. Actually, I have num1, num2. They're actually first and second, are they? I should be testing each of these in between here, so let's do that here on this one. I'll test these two, make sure that they work. Otherwise, I will introduce errors. And that's another really good point. When you're working with your programs and you need to make a change, make one change, test it, make sure that it works. If you make a whole bunch of changes and then test it, you might find that you have several problems with your program and you're really not sure which one of the changes that you made has affected the program in such a way that it doesn't work. So it is really good practice to make one change at a time and test it to make sure that it works. So I should have tested it after I had changed the sum method. But now that we've got both of these, let's go ahead and test them both. I'll compile and make sure that they compile, and sure enough, I've caused a error here. Doesn't like difference. Do I have something misspelled? Oh, sure. Difference is not a value, or is not a variable that is holding a value anymore. Difference is a function. So I can't use just difference by itself. In fact, it tells me here, cannot find variable difference. Okay? So difference, I either need to call the difference function again, or, you know, in this particular case, I could do first, subtract second, and that would do the same thing, which I think is what I had in the original program. Just for sense of calling methods, let's go ahead and we'll just call the method again. And this is a very possible thing to do. You can call a function from within a function. That should work fine. So let's compile that. Let's see, we have, it says a parenthesis that doesn't work right. I'm not seeing it, so let's try it again here. I have that parenthesis matches up there. Oops, I changed the wrong one. Alright, let's get back here again. I need an extra parenthesis down here. That's where it is. Okay, so let's compile this again. Alright, void type not valid here. Okay, sure enough. This is expecting a return value, so that isn't going to work. Alright, that is a very true statement. So I am just going to have to do a first subtract second. It's actually really good that I'm making these mistakes so that you can see how I am debugging my code here. But see, it tells me right here, void type not allowed here. So here, even though I'm calling the function, it's not returning anything. So there's nothing then to send to the absolute value. So I am going to have to go back to my original situation or I just need to subtract these two values. So I'm going to go in here and I'll get rid of that, and I'll add my operator, and then I think I've got some extra parentheses. I don't need difference anymore in there, and we'll get rid of this extra parenthesis here. So here I'm actually going to take the two variables that I take in as inputs, subtract them so that there's a value that's being passed into the math abs method. That should now work. So let's do a compile. And now I have no syntax errors. Okay, so now we can go to testing these methods. I'm first going to test each of the different methods that we've just written, the sum and the difference, to see if they'll show anything here. I think I can just test them separately. Put in a 3, or a, yeah, I can do 3 and a 5. Oops. Press the enter key instead of my tab. There we go. And the sum is 8. So that one is working. And I can test out the difference. 5 and 3. And that shows a 2. Okay, so we know that the methods work. Let's try the whole program. Come up here to void main, run it, ask for values. Let's go ahead and put in a 3 first and the 5 second. Our difference then actually should show up as a negative number. Okay, so sum is 8, difference is -2, and those are correct, and those are the two things that we changed, and those are producing the correct result. So everything else is good because we haven't changed anything, but the product is still 15, the average is 4, distance is 2. Notice that's a positive because I'm using the math absolute value of the difference of the two numbers, and then my largest and smallest value. Okay, so let's go back to our program and let's continue down here now, and let's take the product program, or product method, and we'll make that a method that does not return a value. So we'll take this out of here, we'll add it down here. Oops, that's not where I wanted it. Put it right there. We need to get rid of the return line because this method is not going to return a value anymore, and we need to change that to result. And we need to change the int to void. And then up here, keep that method showing down here. Up here for my call, I just need to call it, not assign it to a variable because it's not returning anything. So I just call the function, pass in the two parameters. All right, let's double check that. Okay, so let's compile it. No errors, good. We'll test out this new void product. We'll type in a 5 and a 3. Oops, 3 and keep pressing the enter key. There we go. And I get a 15 that it prints out, so that works fine. Perfect. All right. So now if I run the whole program, that's always good to do as well. 3 and 5, I'm getting a 15, so that's good. That's working. All right. Last one here, our average. I'll go ahead and grab the print statements for the average, cut them out of here, and put them down here. Change this to void, change this to result, and and get rid of my return. Up here, I will get rid of the assignment statement by just removing that, and I just call it simply. And then these other ones we're going to leave alone because I don't have any control over this method or that method or that method, so I can't change those two void methods. Those are going to be methods that return a value because that's what they are within the math library. And again, that's that black box, okay? The black box tells me I can't manipulate the code that's in there, and I shouldn't need to because it works the way it is, and the way it is right now is it returns a value, so I'm going to still need to have the assignment statement here to assign the returned value from this method to a variable in my program. So those I can't modify. Now I do have the control to modify these other ones. Okay, so let's go ahead and test our last one here. I'll run just the average function, and let's put in a 1 and a 2, and you see that I get an average of 1.5. Notice that when I was running my methods before, when I was testing the methods before, I would get that little box up here. That's because it never printed out anything, but it could tell me what the value that was going to be returned. So it showed it up here in this box that was shown here earlier. When it prints out a statement within the method, then I get this dialog box here. Or it's not dialog box, it's just a console window that shows the result. Okay. So this is one way in which I can take my return methods and change them to methods that don't return a value. Now you say, well, that's pretty cool. That's, pretty slick. It worked out nicely. But one thing I want to mention to you, or point out to you, is take a look at what we've got going on here. These statements here are basically pretty much the same. So one thing that I could do is I could rewrite this program in such a way that I write only one method that doesn't return a value, and that method could be the method that displays my information. Okay, so let's take a look at that as a possible option. So in the next video, I'm going to illustrate how we can do that.